Could I have a motion to return to public session?
Make that motion.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public participation on agenda items only. Each member of the public may speak a maximum of 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record.
Katie McDermott, Roselle Park. Agenda item 1. Were the policies amended to include parental notification in instances of seclusion? Agenda item 11. This is an amazing partnership, and I'm commenting so that the rest of the public will understand what a big deal this is. The federal government mandates that each state have a university center for excellence in developmental disabilities. Ours is the Boggs Center at Rutgers. I'm a graduate of the Boggs Center's Partners in Policymaking program, a year-long intensive. I've also taken numerous courses in person-centered planning there. The faculty and staff at the Boggs Center are world-class. I have no doubt this 3-year program will have a transformative effect on the faculty, staff, and students at the middle school. Thank you so much for applying to be in next year's cohort. Agenda item 5C, I am beyond thrilled that Mr. Flecka will be the new principal at Sherman. He was one of my oldest child's favorite teachers. You made a fabulous choice, and I know he will do an amazing job. Agenda item 7C. I saved this one for last because I knew it would be hard for me to get through it. It's hard to put into words the impact Principal Lechner had on Sherman, my family, and the entire Roselle Park community. When my youngest started at Sherman, the children in the self-contained classrooms often felt like an afterthought. They were inadvertently left off field trips. They didn't participate in special events, and in general, it felt like they were locked away in the basement, out of mind, out of sight. Out of sight, out of mind. Principal Lechner made including these students a priority. She even asked her general education teachers to make goals about what they would do to improve inclusion at Sherman. She took a struggling self-contained program and breathed new life into it, assigning teachers like Mrs. Stevens, one of the best special education teachers in the district, and paraprofessionals who were dedicated to improving outcomes for our special education population. Through her school-wide initiative of always being humble and kind, Principal Lechner created an environment where every student valued and appreciated differences. The kindness my son receives from his general education peers is undeniable, and it's due to the culture she fostered at Sherman. While Principal Lechner was a fabulous administrator, making sure to always take care of compliance issues, dotting her I's and crossing her T's, she never forgot why she was there: to help her students have experiences of wonder, imagination, and discovery. We will miss her terribly and wish her all the best in her new position.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I will close the public participation. We're now going to have a ethics 2024 training presentation by Mrs. Cleary and Ms. Reese, from the New Jersey State Board Association.
Okay, what you did. Good evening, and thank you for having us to do your ethics training this year. As you may know, I'm Patty Reese. I have been your field service rep for a couple of years, but the association found that we need more field service reps because we need to be more available to our boards. And with that, we're hiring more people. Jean is one of the people that we hired, and I'm working with Jean, and ultimately she will be working the field service rep in Union County. And so, I'd like to introduce Jean to you, and you'll be in very good hands.
So I would just like to say a little bit about myself. I started with New Jersey School Boards back in February. I've been very, very fortunate to work alongside Patty Hoot with her experience. And I am a former board member myself who served 6 years. And recently, before I started with New Jersey School Boards, I actually worked in central office. I was the Director of Operations and Special Projects at the Scotch Plains Fanwood School District and was on the superintendent's cabinet. So that's just a little bit about my background and my experience. Before we start, I would just like to say a brief little statement for the benefit of the public as well as the members here. Ethics training is required annually, and for both experienced and new board members, this training is meant to serve you so that you can focus properly on your roles and responsibilities, so that you can go forward always maintaining the public trust. Board members, as you know, are policymakers, planners, and appraisers, and it's the function of the superintendent, who you have hired and placed and evaluate to run the district on a day-to-day basis. So research shows that boards with strong governance protocols who maintain the public trust and remain focused on the important roles that they have of policy, planning, and appraisal have a very high positive correlation to successful student outcomes. So that's just the opening, and then we can start with our presentation. Oh, I am supposed to over my shoulder. So the first slide just is a disclaimer to say that this is a training session for information purposes. We are not providing legal advice. Your board counsel is the appropriate person to contact if there's any other questions. It's been said that public service is a core value that can improve the lives and the world around you. And as school officials, you have the honor of serving the public. But of course, with that comes responsibility. So tonight we're going to look at how we hold ourselves accountable, recognizing that the School Ethics Act is a set of minimum ethical standards by which all officials must abide. The School Ethics Act basically reminds us that it's essential that the conduct of members of local boards of education and local administrators hold the respect and the confidence of the people. Board members and administrators must avoid the conduct which is in violation of public trust, or, and this is important to recognize, that creates a justifiable impression among the public that the trust is being violated. So the School Ethics Act established 5 things: the School Ethics Commission, prohibited acts, mandatory training requirements for board members. It established the Code of Ethics 9 years later, and also has disclosure statements that are necessary to file relative to personal and relative relationships and financial statements. So who's accountable under this act? The provisions apply to all school officials, board members, some of us at New Jersey School Board, the staff and officers, and your local administrators. And we're governed by prohibited acts, and we must file disclosure statements. Additionally, provisions apply specifically to elected or appointed board members to follow the Code of Ethics, which we're going to look at, and to make sure that you're meeting the mandatory training requirements. So who enforces this act? That's the School Ethics Commission, which is the body charged with that. It's composed of 9 members appointed by the governor for a 3-year term. No one party may have more than 5 members on it. And it's composed of 2 school board members, 2 school administrators, and 5 non-school officials. And what do they have jurisdiction over? Well, they provide advisory opinions. Only school officials may request an advisory opinion to determine if their or another's proposed activity would violate the act. So it's actually seeking advice, and they will provide that advice. School Ethics Commission also has jurisdiction over ethics complaints. Now, anyone can file an ethics complaint alleging a violation of the School Ethics Act. Advisory opinions are published if 6 members of the School Ethics Commission vote to support publishing it, and those are things that we use to refer to in our practice. They report, the School Ethics Commission, that overall they generally get about 85 ethics complaints filed a year that they review, and are asked to provide 35 advisory opinions. So the mandatory training section of the Act requires that in the first 90 days, new board members take Governance 1, which is an orientation for new members to provide basic knowledge and skills, explain New Jersey CUSAC, harassment, intimidation, and bullying, the superintendent evaluation process, the Open Public Meetings Act, and of course, the Code of Ethics. By the end of year 2, it's required that board members take Governance 2, which focuses on finance and labor. By the end of year 3, Governance 3 will go in depth on student achievement. And by the end of the year following every re-election or reappointment, Governance 4 must be taken, which will provide the most recent legal updates. New Jersey School Board provides this training in different ways, in person with live virtual sessions, as well as self-paced online. So we mentioned earlier that there are disclosure statements that must be filed. All new school officials, which elected or appointed board members are, must file disclosure statements within 30 days of the start of employment or taking office if it's an administrator. Returning school officials have until April 30th, which is the deadline to file those. So we want to take a quick look to see what happens regarding penalties for violations that are found. The SEC makes the recommendation to the commissioner, and the following penalties can be arrived at. A reprimand would be a rebuke by the commissioner that the conduct violated the standards that we will look at in a moment, but does not result in any formal resolution. The next penalty would be a censure, which becomes a formal disapproval by the commissioner, which is publicized by the adoption of a resolution. So names get put on there, that's available and open to the public. The next step would be a penalty of suspension, which would bar a member from any activity for a set period of time. And finally, of course, for egregious acts, it would be a removal, an immediate termination from board membership, or employment if it's an administrator. Okay, let's go back one. So on the next slides, we're going to look at each part of the Code of Ethics, which goes A to J, just to bring your attention to the fact that on the bottom, there are standards which actually go in depth about what would have to be provided as evidence to successfully support that there was in fact a violation. So we're going to focus on the top. So A says, I will uphold and enforce all laws, rules, and regulations of the State Board of Education and court orders pertaining to schools. Desired changes shall be brought about only through legal and ethical procedures. I will make decisions in terms of the educational welfare of children and will seek to develop and maintain public schools that meet the individual needs of all children, regardless of their ability, race, creed, sex, or social standing. Oftentimes when board members are running, they have a certain platform, but we need to set that aside and make sure that we're always focusing on the education for all children. C, I will confine my board action to policy making, planning, and appraisal, and I will help to frame policies and plans only after the board has consulted those who will be affected by them. And that goes back to our earlier conversation where that is the role of the board. I will carry out my responsibility not to administer the school, but together with my fellow board members to see that they are well run. That's the appraisal. I will recognize that the authority rests with the Board of Education and will make no personal promises nor take any private action that may compromise the board. And in a few moments, we'll look at what comes under conflict. I will refuse to surrender my independent judgment to special interests or partisan political groups, or to use the schools for personal gain or for the gain of friends. I will hold confidential all matters pertaining to the school, which, if disclosed, would needlessly injure individuals or the schools. In all other matters, I'll provide accurate information and, in concert with my fellow board members, interpret to the staff the aspirations of the community for its school. I will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel available after consideration of the recommendation of the Chief Administrative Officer. So we know that the board hires the superintendent and evaluates the superintendent. The superintendent is the chief executive of the district and hires all the other people. I will support and protect school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. And this in the past has come up for an issue if you may hold certain beliefs, or the community does, about, for instance, curriculum, but you need to support the staff that's properly following what has been in statute, the necessary education for the children. And finally, J, I will refer all complaints to the Chief Administrative Officer and will act on the complaints at public meetings only after a failure of an administrative solution. And this is really an important thing that goes back to the chain of command and the proper way to allow the administrators in the district, whether it's teacher, principal, or goes up to the superintendent level, to find an administrative solution so that that can be the most expedient and provide an opportunity for learning and discussion. Only when that fails would it come before the board, and the board would only participate acting as a full board. Oop, I think we may have lost the sound. Okay, it's back. So now we're going to just take a look at some of the cases. I should have said earlier that this presentation is available in central office and can be shared after tonight, so that the hyperlinks here and at the end with the resource information would be available to all of you. So we're not going to read through all of them, but a couple of them are important to just maybe touch upon. So the first one here talks about a member that copied and pasted information from a board email and sent it with the non-public contents to township officials. This intercommunication had the potential, it was determined, to compromise the board, and it was recommended for a reprimand. Further down, we have C-2020, which talks about, on their own, a member had contacted vendors and districts for prices to go from MacBooks to Chromebooks. Now, at a meeting, it's fine to express disagreement about the way forward, but it's inappropriate to conduct private investigations as a board member. It effectuates plans without consulting those who will be impacted, and because of that, it placed the board at risk, and that led to a censure. Oh, I'm sorry. It's the over-the-shoulder that's getting me. Oh, it's not responsive. Okay. All right. So down midway, C-2521 talks about a member that met with the public to justify her actions for a walk-on motion of a highly divisive board action to change a holiday name. Now, this was an independent action that was determined to have undermined the board's decision-making process, as it's up to the board to publicly discuss and explain the rationale for decisions. And it also undermined the administration's authority and imposes an unnecessary strain between the administration and the board. So that led to a reprimand. So as we said earlier, the School Ethics Act actually has prohibited, the School Ethics Commission has prohibited acts. This is a summary here, and on the top is a hyperlink that you'll have available to you to look at more in depth if you have questions. But it talks about the need to make sure that if you have a conflict, you handle that appropriately. And and says that you need to recuse yourself if there's a benefit to you as a school official or your immediate family due to the following: any business interests, use of a position to secure unwanted privileges or advantages, any financial involvement that may impair your objectivity, any service or employment that may prejudice independent judgment, any gifts or favors that were offered with the intent to influence, and any possible financial gain. If any of those are present, you may not participate in any discussions or vote. So when we look at conflict, it's important to understand the recusal process as opposed to abstaining from a vote. When you have a conflict, you're told that you need to recuse yourself from the discussion and the vote. Abstaining alone is not enough. It's not sufficient enough to memorialize it. What you want to do when you know you have a conflict is to be very transparent about that, recuse yourself. That helps to memorialize that in the meeting notes. And the next step would just be to get the advice of your board attorney to see if there's any effect on the impact for a quorum or the recording of votes. But the recusal is a very important step to understand. So conflicts come out of your relationship, and at the top it outlines immediate family members, which are basically easy to understand: spouse, a civil union or domestic partner, or dependent child residing in the same household. But underneath it, it's an extensive list of who could be considered a relative. The thing to know about this is that the term relative doesn't really appear in prohibited acts or in the Code of Ethics, but can still cause a conflict. So if you have any concerns or questions about whether you actually do have a conflict, you should seek your counsel's advice. So here's a list. It's hard to see. I did print this out and put it in your packets just for future reference. But it talks about the familial relationship and whether or not you would have a conflict which would preclude you from participating in the union negotiations or in anything to do with the superintendent's contract or evaluation. For hiring and personnel, it says clearly that you may not hire the relative of a board member or the chief school administrator, with very, very limited exceptions. If the relative already works in the district, then an administrator may not exercise direct or indirect authority over that relative. If it's a board member, the board member may not take part in any employment matters concerning the superintendent or supervisors who are in the chain of command between the relative and the superintendent. And that really is a difficult thing because everybody working in the district is working under the superintendent. A board member may not take part in the search, selection, or vote to hire a new superintendent or any post-hire evaluation or contract discussions. So here we take a look at collective bargaining and how it relates to ethics. So if there's a relationship to the board member, we see on the left column, it talks about whether or not you can participate. So for a spouse, dependent child, a child who's not dependent, who's living at home, and a relative, if the current member works in the district, you may not participate in negotiations or vote to ratify the contract. If you yourself, your spouse, or dependent child works outside the district in another district, you may not participate in negotiations, but after the memorandum of agreement, salary guides, and total compensation are in place, you may vote to ratify. If you have an independent child or a relative who works out of the district, then you may participate in the negotiations here, and you can vote to ratify. Now, this is all, especially, we have to make sure there are no other conflicts that may be involved. So, other possible conflicts could be that the family member is not in the unit, but terms of employment linked to the unit. And here you can think of a vendor that might be working in the district, and you might have a family member working for that vendor. The next could be supervised employee in the unit. An example could be an aftercare program where the person works and is being supervised by a staff member. Or immediate family or relative that has heightened union involvement in another district. That could also create a conflict. So here, and you'll get this when the presentation is shared with you, that it just is a reference chart about advisory opinions that we spoke about earlier. This is just a sample of some, and cases related to prohibitive acts. And this is just a guide for you to see and to be informed by. So we'll take a moment to just look at the effect of a conflict on committees. So, for instance, if a board president has a child that's an instructional aide in the district, we know that it's the board president's responsibility to assign committees and chairs. But if that was the case where they had a family member in the district, they could not choose any committee member nor be on any committees involving the local education association or matters relating to the superintendent. They also may not choose the chair or the members of the committee or be involved in anything that remotely touches upon this, including but not limited to personnel negotiations, instructional, and finance committees. Another example below is a board member has a spouse who's a 10-month employee in technology department. We would have to look at that and say that then they could not be involved in any and all matters, including service on any committees that remotely touch upon or directly relate to the spouse's employment in that technology department, including without limitation, personnel negotiations or finance committees. So we'll look here at some findings for ethics violations to do with executive session. The first one talks about a member who attended executive session where there was a discussion on candidates to fill a vacant board seat without coming forward and saying that their husband had applied. The second one is a board president attended multiple discussions on matters involving an immediate family member. Other board members were unaware of the identity. Now, in both of these, they had consulted counsel. These led to censure because, again, we always want to maintain the public trust, right? When a member with a conflict goes behind doors, it creates a justifiable impression to the public that their trust is being violated. It provides unwanted privilege or advantage not available to the public. Other members could chill or be intimidated from speaking their mind clearly. And members are responsible for their own actions with a duty to act prudently and cautiously, even though that they had sought counsel first. And that brings us to advice of counsel defense for penalties. There are prerequisite factors on advice of counsel: that the approval or advice was received prior to the actions being taken, that the individual who offered the advice had the authority to do so, that the individual seeking the advice or approval made a full disclosure of all pertinent facts, and that the individual complies with the advice that's received, including any restrictions that it may contain. If all four factors of the advice of counsel defense can be met, a board member may be able to avoid a penalty for violating the School Ethics Act. But a violation of the School Ethics Act can still be found. The advice of counsel defense is extremely fact sensitive, and in order for it to apply, all factors must be satisfied. And it is important to know that, and we'll talk a little bit about this going forward, that content really matters. And these cases are very specific to the facts in them, which is why we don't have always, you can do this or can't do that. It's very sensitive to what's involved in that situation. Oftentimes, when board members are concerned about avoiding conflict, they raise the question about their ability to continue to volunteer in school. And we recognize that many board members are very active in their school districts. So serving on the board doesn't prevent volunteerism in the school, but you are a school official now, and you have to pay special attention to two things in particular: your degree of involvement and the degree of authority. So the degree of involvement, you want to look at whether or not you're giving directions or instructions to staff or students, or if you're taking orders from staff, right? That poses it clouds the issue of what the relationship is. If you're being seen as being enmeshed in the building and always there, that could be problematic as well. Another thing that's recommended is that you avoid handling any school monies, because you are a school official, so it blurs the line with your volunteerism, so you should leave that to another trusted member of the volunteer committee. And if you're going to lead, if you've led this in the past, taking into consideration how it may be perceived by the public, you may want to take less than a leadership role in those volunteer activities. Of course, it's always best practice to advise the superintendent that you'll be performing this work and being involved in the in the volunteering. You want to refrain, of course, at all times from board discussions or any kind of votes. If you're there volunteering and you're in the school, keep it focused on what you're there to do, probably directly related to children, and stay away from any topics that really need to be addressed when the board is convened. And always be cognizant of the obligations of the act to guide your conduct. So when it comes to voting, board members are entrusted to review the recommendations from the superintendent and then to vote in a way that they feel best serves the needs of the district and its students. However, you must always consider your statutory obligations. Now, for appointments, transfers, or removal of certificated and non-certificated staff, a member can vote in a way that may not support the superintendent's recommendation. However, it cannot be an arbitrary or capricious reason. In advisory opinion A1222, it was asked if a board member would violate the School Ethics Act if they vote affirmatively to refuse to implement the New Jersey student learning standards for the comprehensive health and physical education. That was a topic that still has a lot of discussion around it. The SEC's response was that if it's shown that a school official acted contrary to the laws, rules, and regulations promulgated by the State Board of Education, they could be in violation of the Ethics Act. Another area that comes up, of course, is social media presence and activity to avoid any ethical violation. So as a general matter, a school official doesn't violate the act merely by engaging in social media. It is part of the world that we live in. Instead, the Commission's analysis is guided by whether a reasonable member of the public could perceive that the school official is speaking in his or her official capacity or for your official duties. Now remember, the perception of a reasonable member of the public is left open to interpretation. As I said earlier, these cases are very, very specific in how they are interpreted. It depends in large part on the content of the speech. If the speech in question has no correlation to board business or anything to do with the district, and couldn't possibly be regarded as a statement or a position on behalf of the board as a body, you wouldn't be violating the act. Posting pictures of your family picnic or some local event that was going on that you enjoyed, not going to be a violation. However, if the speech in question does relate to the business of the board or its operations, it's then reasonable to perceive the speech as being offered in an official capacity and pursuant to official duties. That's something to really keep in mind. Now, the School Ethics Commission suggests that if you are going to maintain social media accounts, that you put a disclaimer, and they provide this as a sample in bold. The following statements are made in my capacity as a private citizen and not in my capacity as a board member. these statements are also not representative of the board or its individual members and solely represent my own personal opinion. So the questions that we get asked frequently are, if you use the disclaimer, does it automatically protect you from being in violation of the act? And the answer is no. It does help clarify for the public, perhaps, it's a statement that you're making. However, it's very, very driven by what the content is to be determined if it's a violation. So based on content, if a reasonable member of the public could perceive you're speaking in your official capacity, that could make the disclaimer inadequate and of no force or effect to protect you. If you have social media accounts and you're staying away from anything to do with board business and you don't use a disclaimer, doesn't mean you're automatically in violation. Again, content matters. And you are not required to use the exact wording of the disclaimer provided, but I would point out that it was provided by the School Ethics Commission. So in this case, a board member asked if, as a private citizen, it would violate the act if they answered operational questions about the district on a Facebook page, like a Q&A between parents and the board. The SEC's response is important to understand, and they talk about board members don't abdicate the right to freedom of speech. However, board members are also public officials and therefore must exercise precautions to violating the act. It must be clear that the comments made at any time or place other than at a board meeting do not appear to be written on behalf of or with authorization of the board. The community is aware of your status and would likely attribute statements from you as being representative of board speech. And we know that your policies, and you can refer to your own district policies, will address that who is appropriate to speak for the board. Generally, it's the board president and the superintendent to speak on behalf of the district. Social media general guidance. Any account that identifies you as a board member. So if you had a social media account while you were a candidate for office, you can no longer use that because it would lead to confusion for the public. If you like or share from a personal account, some other, something that you see of interest, that doesn't have anything to do, again, with board activities or work or district work, then you would probably be fine. But of course, as in all things, we want to be very careful to make sure that we're not supporting anything divisive. You are a school official, and that's just general good practice. So some points to consider as we close out. New Jersey School Boards recommends that boards develop lists of members and administrators who have conflicts and review that regularly so that you're prepared to move forward and everybody has a clear understanding of what they may or may not participate in. Always consult with your board attorney on ethics issues to identify any conflicts or issues that you may have and need more clarity on. And finally, continue to check school board notes, which you all should be receiving as board members, to keep abreast of the newly released advisory opinions and decisions from the commission. That's updated regularly and is very helpful. So in closing, just the reminder that board members may not deliberately disregard or ignore ethical standards that are required by law to be upheld and to enforce. So when board members do so, it not only threatens the integrity of your board, it also unnecessarily compromises district personnel and subverts the very purpose for which you are elected, namely to serve the needs of the school district and all of its students. And again, your role as board members is to work with policy, to plan, to appraise, and to make sure that the goals and ambitions of the community for the children of your district are being appropriately attended to. So the last slide will just show you that we have resources available. Again, those hyperlinks will work for you. Going forward, if you have any questions or concerns or on this topic or any other, As your field service representative, I'm happy to take your call or provide any information that you feel you need going forward. And I'd just like to say thank you so much for your service. On behalf of your students and community, you play such an important role, and I applaud you for your attention and wish you all a good opening to the new school year.
Yeah, so there's a brief part waiting for the second part. My name is Vince DeLucia. I'm the Director of Special Projects for the New Jersey School Boards Association. And what I want to do tonight is kind of introduce myself to you a little bit, show you a few slides. I've had a conversation with your administration. I know that you're planning a retreat in August, and I wanted to give you some ideas about some of the work that you may want to consider in order to do that. In our society today, with so much importance on all the work in schools, it clearly goes beyond the classroom. And part of my experience is part of that. I'm waiting for that to come up. However, in essence, my experience in schools, I've served in every role, literally, except for superintendent. I've worked in very high-performing districts and districts that were quite the opposite. And what I can share with you is that it does not matter what the profile of the district is. The same structures, the same strategies are critical in order to really ensure that there's improvement in total growth. Our world is changing. We need to prepare kids for their futures, not our pasts. And with technology, with what's happening with AI and all those other initiatives, we need to ensure that our staff, our boards, our community is very much aware of what the needs are for kids to be successful in this century. I want to ask you a couple questions, not to answer, but rhetorically. What do our kids need to be successful in this century? I'm old enough to remember when a kid graduated from high school in New Jersey, they could lead with a diploma a very healthy, comfortable middle-class lifestyle. Our schools were designed today, 100 years ago, 1890s. We need to continue to change so that when our kids graduate, they have a place to go, be independent, be self-supporting, and feel confidence. And I'm going to suggest to you that the stresses of our society today, we talk about COVID, and those impacts, we know they continue to affect kids. I have 4 kids. I'm thankful they're grown up, but I got 3 grandkids. And I see the struggles that they have. But I am also so fortunate. My middle grandchild is 10 years old on the spectrum. The educators in her district have made an unbelievable difference where she is out of her shell and she reads. But these are the things, the successes. Unfortunately, you guys don't hear about all the successes all the time, but parents at home are reflecting constantly on the impact of schools. I'm not going to go through this. This gives you an idea of my experiences. I've got experiences in government. I have experience in industry, in the pharmaceutical medical device industry. I've owned a small business, and I've got a lot of years in education. My experience in education is in high-performing districts and districts that weren't. Districts that were economically comfortable and those that were not. And it didn't matter, because the same structures, the same dedication, the same ideas in each of those districts were implemented with a focus on the needs of that district. And it began at the conversations at this table and tables like this. I'm not going to get into it deeply. You may be familiar with the Iowa Lighthouse Study. That was done by the Iowa School Boards Association, and it documents very specifically the behaviors that boards have that contribute to the success of kids, the success of the district, and also ensuring teacher retention. You may be aware of a project school boards have been involved with for 10 years with Rutgers and Kane. It documents the impact of collaboration among staff, among boards, with parents, and how it does a couple of things. When there's formal collaboration in a district, two things happen. Number one, regardless of the profile of the district, controlling for poverty, there are significant increases in student learning, especially in math, less in language arts. But the other thing that they've learned is that after 5 years, there is no difference in teacher retention between a high poverty, a low poverty, a high performing, and a low performing school district. When the staff feels that they're valued, and when the family, when the communities are included in that work, it changes the profile of a district. So this is about best practices. Again, we're just kind of having an introduction, but it begins with beliefs, shared beliefs, having a conversation to have an understanding of what we believe as representatives of this community, and where can we build the bridges that show that we have those same beliefs. But most importantly, we need to have beliefs of that kids can learn. That with the right support structure, kids do learn. We also have to believe that as the decision makers for this district, you can influence change. Your district, your community is watching you in a good way. They know that with good leadership, their kids are going to have an even better opportunity of success for their chosen fields, whatever they may be. But you also have to have an agreement of what it's going to take. And one of the things that the Iowa Lighthouse Study says are your board's actions driven by a set core of beliefs for student learning. In other words, all kids can learn. They may learn at different rates. Sometimes we forget the ultimate goal of our systems. Our goal is high school graduation. Kids learn at different rates. We know that some of those kids are taking higher level classes in 9th and 10th grade, sometimes at 8th or 7th. Other kids might not take it to 11th grade. It doesn't mean that they're not smart. It means that they learn differently, and they learn at different rates. This is what the Lighthouse Study reports, that when boards have these 7 traits, it has a positive impact on learning, on schools, on climate, on kids, and everything else. Shared leadership, what does that mean? We lead in the areas that we have strengths. When I was a mayor, it was very simple. I'm not a finance guy. I'm an education guy. I had an accountant on my council. Guess what? That was the individual who chaired the finance committee and worked with our town administrator and BA. Those with the expertise to represent the board and the community. Continuous improvement. You know, as a parent, as a grandparent now, I want to see my kids and my grandkids continue to grow, not stop. If we stop, we become stagnant. At any age, we're going to lose opportunities. The ability to create and sustain initiatives. That also means the ability to determine when an initiative isn't working and take it off the plate. We need to have those understandings that we're going to evaluate things. Having a supportive workplace, professional learning, the importance of using data. And I believe one of the foundation is ensuring that our community and our parents are involved. Those voices are critical if we want to have true support for the work that we're doing. And more importantly, have an understanding of what those goals are. And those goals are across the spectrum, but I'm going to suggest to you that overwhelmingly, there's one goal. They want their kids to be successful. They want them to be healthy, well-adjusted. The way we get there, well, we all have different styles. That's fine. But we have to focus on what our goals are and then have an understanding of what's going to work best for us in order to get there. When boards do this, this is all from the data, boards establish learning time, like you've done tonight is learning together, talking to each other, having extensive conversations. The whole thing about shared leadership, develop a willingness and readiness to lead and allow others to lead. Build commitment to the improvement focus through shared information and discussion. Once we recognize that we have a challenge, let's work together to solve it. And by engaging in deliberate policy development, and as my colleagues have shared with you, leading through your policies, which are all critical as far as the Ethics Act. I want to show you this slide. This is a true story. My wife and I are planning a cross-country trip. We both want to get to the West Coast. Good friends are in LA. I've been cross-country in the past. I want to go a northern route because we're going to go in August, and I don't want to have snow if I'm camping. So I want to do that first. She wants to go a southern route because she wants to see family in Arizona. We have the same goal. We have different ways to get there. It's no different than what happens at this table or in any classroom, any discussion. What we need to do is have an understanding of what those other goals are. There are 10 components for total school growth and improvement. Curriculum instruction, assessment accountability, professional learning, leadership and governance, parent and community involvement, resources, student support services. The Boggs Center is a marvelous place. I was so happy to hear about that tonight. Technology integration, policy advocacy, and continuous improvement mechanisms and strategies. Now, those are things that at the board and at the administrative level and at the other educational levels that are important to address. But what I'm suggesting to you, this is some information for you to consider as you give input in terms of what you feel your August retreat is about. This is on your server here, so you can have this is in your district. It can be shared with anybody. And this is just some of the examples of what districts in New Jersey are addressing today. I guarantee you are addressing 80 to 90, if not more, % of them today. But if you also look down, those things like internships and apprenticeships, that's the dual enrollment commission program is coming on now. So that within 5 years, every high school in New Jersey will have opportunities for kids to learn trades, to have apprenticeships, paid apprenticeships as seniors, and internships as juniors. So they have an idea of where they want their life path to be, their career path to be. Again, this is what it takes for all kids to achieve. Those partnerships, high quality instruction, PL for families, for teachers, for everybody. Collaboration, PLCs, data, effective clinical supervision of all staff, RTI, IEPs, 504s. These are the foundational pieces that help a district succeed. It's always about relationships. What do we share? Shared goals. Do we believe there are multiple ways to achieve goals? We don't have to agree, but we do have to listen to each other. We don't have to like each other, but we should respect each other, and we have to respect each other's roles and responsibilities. We do have to develop genuine trust. Without trust, we can disagree, but we can't be disagreeable. But without trust, how do we move forward? How do we come to compromise? How do we truly discuss whatever the issues might be before us? And we make decisions based on all factors, determine which we believe is best for kids, our community, and their future. I'm going to just ask you to take a quick game with me right now so you have a better idea of who I am. And it's usually something that I do when I do PL as a way to start building that team so people have an understanding of who they are. So these are 6 statements about me. 1 is false. I'm going to ask you to determine which one is false after I give you a little bit of a story. I mentioned earlier I worked in the medical device industry. I worked for Siemens, nuclear medical. Back in the 80s, they introduced the first PET scanners. I was a distant consultant introducing those to radiologists and et cetera in the New York City area. I love the outdoors. I mentioned we're planning a cross-country trip. I've hiked the Grand Canyon. I whitewater rafted in Wyoming. I climbed a 12,000-foot mountain in Salt Lake City, mountain biked the Smokies. One of my roles, number 3, was as a middle school principal. It was a difficult school, but 56 kids from a neighboring city high school hid in the woods as my kids were being dismissed, came out with bats because of a disagreement over a recreation game the night before. 56 kids, I think 30 were arrested. 2 cops had their arms broken. And that's when I learned from the girls in my school that if you take your posts out for your earrings, put them between your fingers, use them as a weapon against somebody's face, and pull down. That's what the 11-year-olds taught me. I had dinner at the White House in 1993, I think it was, when President Clinton was in office. When I was mayor and as a councilman, I wore a wire for 7 years for the FBI. I uncovered corruption. And finally, I'm conversant in Italian. Which of those do you individually think is false? 5, all right. Any other 5? How about 1? Who says 1? Anybody say 1? 2? 3? 4? You're 3? How about a 4? How about a 5? How about a 6? Sorry, folks. 1 is true. 2 is true. 3 is true. 4 is true. 5 is true. I don't speak a word of Italian. I can speak in this room. The truth is that my one grandmother was born in the Greenwich Village about 1895. She was born here. My other 3 grandparents were not. She witnessed the bias that her family experienced at that time in Manhattan, and she refused to let my mother, my aunt, or my uncles learn anything except what we can't say here. So, but my point is this. My point is this. When we have an opportunity to begin by just doing a quick exercise to get to know each other, it breaks the ice like any other party, any other get-together. And I'm going to suggest to you that as a teacher, what I learned that when my kids were happy, when they laughed, they were more open to learning. When they felt comfortable in my classroom, they were more open to conversation. So I appreciate your attention this evening. Again, I'll be happy to work with you guys if it works out that way. But regardless, feel free to contact me if I can help you from school boards. Have a great night.
Thank you for that. We're going to do the NJGPA presentation next. Thank you.
It's not up yet, but I'm Colleen Bodek, the Director of Guidance and Testing for the school district. We are going to present, or I'm going to present the NJGPA results this evening. We're required to present them to boards of education in the community within 60 days of receipt, and we received them in late June. I'll start the presentation, but it should be up any minute now. So the NJGPA is the New Jersey Graduation Proficiency Assessment, and it's given to all 11th graders, and it's required for graduation. So this spring, our students took it. Actually, let me get the presentation. I can read it from my... All right, so the NJGPA is given in ELA and mathematics, so students have to pass both in order to meet graduation requirements. And ELA students are tested in the 10th grade standards for English language arts, and for math, the standards for Algebra 1 and geometry. In the spring of 2023, the State Board of Education determined the cut scores for NJGPA as well as the cut scores for the alternative assessments. So if students don't meet the 725 cut score on math or English language arts, they have an opportunity to meet graduation requirements through a variety of other avenues. And that includes SAT, PSAT, ACT scores. And if that fails, students may complete a portfolio that's submitted to the state for consideration. But any student who did not meet proficiency this spring will retake the assessment in the fall. The state does offer either summer or fall retake, and we will opt for the fall because we often have many transfer students that will need to take it. So if we could go to slide, oh, it's me. Sorry about that. Okay, so here we are. This slide here just shows our high school results compared to the state's results. So in English language arts, 91% of our high school students passed the assessment, and in math, 59% passed. You can see both of those are above state average. Here is the comparison from last year's results to this year's, which I think is quite telling. Particularly in math, we went up 11 percentage points from 48% passing in math to 59% this year, and we improved by 2 percentage points in English language arts. This is a comparison by race from last year to this year. At the top, you can see last year, 81% of our black students passed, and this year that was up to 90%. And last year, 31% of our students who identify as black passed, and that's up to 65% this year, exceeding the district average as well. For our white students last year, ELA pass rate was 94%, up to 97% this year. Mathematics, 65, down to 58% this year. And for our Hispanic students, we went from 83% passing English language arts last year to 88 this year. And this is huge. For our Hispanic students, we went from 31% passing last year to 54% passing this year. I'm not reporting any data on our Asian students or students who identify as multiple races, as suppression guidelines prohibit me from doing that. This is a comparison by program. At the top, you can see students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. So last year, our free and reduced lunch population, 84% passed ELA, now 85%. Last year, 37% passed the math, and that was up to 53% this year. You can see the increases on the right side for general ed students, 96 to 97% in ELA, 58 to 70% in math. Our multilingual learners, I did not indicate the pass rate for 2023 because, again, suppression guidelines prohibit me from doing that. So that means that less than 10 students fall into that category, so it's not appropriate for me to share that data. Over here on the bottom right, you could see the special education students. And English language arts last year, we had 67% of special education students pass, and that was up to 81% this year. and math went from 19 to 22%. Most people probably can't read the bottom there, but I just noted that the data for students with 504 plans are also not included here because there were less than 10 students with 504s that are in the 11th grade. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Okay, so some notable achievements. Graduation readiness rates improved in math overall by 11%, and in ELA by 2% from last year's results. Some subgroup improvements by race. The scores for Black students improved by 9% in ELA and 34% in math over last year. And for Hispanic students, there was an improvement of 5% in ELA and 23% in math. By program, we had a 16% increase in math scores for students who received free and reduced lunch, a 12% increase in math for general education students, and we had score increases in both ELA, 14%, and math, 3% for special education students. And I just wanted to note that Roselle Park High School special education students fell just 1% under the overall state average for all students in ELA. So that was 81% compared to the overall average for all students in the state. The pass rate for ELA was 82%. And some intervention strategies that we plan to implement in the future. To increase math scores, we're going to have targeted small class additional instruction to reinforce the fundamentals and the tested concepts. We're going to continue to focus on differentiated instruction driven by data. We'll continue to use data to drive decisions and tailor interventions to meet the specific needs of different student groups. For multilingual learners, we will create individualized plans for all students, including state testing accommodations specific under their proficiency level. And English language classes will focus both on academic language and conversational skills that are in line with state standards. And for special education students, we will ensure that IEPs are effectively implemented and tailored to meet the specific needs of each student. And questions can be directed to the people listed there. So for test administration, distribution of results, that's me, the Director of Guidance and Testing, Colleen Bodek. In terms of intervention strategies and instruction, the Director of Curriculum, Mr. Salvo, and the Principal of the high school, Mrs. Costa, may receive those questions. And in terms of special populations, Mrs. Galligallen, the Director of Special Services, and Superintendent Goyce, the ESL Supervisor. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. You don't want to do your... Okay, committee reports. We'll start from my right. Anyone on this side? No? Anyone on my left?
I do have a report for personnel. So we have a bunch of changes this month. We have some new hires, some moves. Unfortunately, we do have 3 resignations, and I'd like to just say best of luck to Miss Lechner. You've done an amazing job, and I know that you're going to continue to do an amazing job in the future. I'd also like to congratulate Mr. Flecka on getting the promotion to the Sherman principal. We know you're going to do an amazing job there. I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Okay. We are going to dive into the agenda items. Under policy, agenda items 1 and 2. Number 1, district policies, second reading, Exhibit A. Number 2, district policies, first reading, Exhibit B. We are adding something that's not on your written agenda. to this portion, which is proposed changes to policy 7510, use of school facilities for consideration. There will be a second reading, I guess, in the next meeting? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the policy section?
Make that motion.
Have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Vice President Constance Quintella,
Yes.
Susan Carlstrom,
Yes.
Lauren Harms,
Yes.
Dr. Brittany Kirkland,
Yes.
Cindy Mago,
Yes.
Jennifer McCarr,
Yes.
Chris Monroe,
Yes.
President Paul Baiamonte.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Under Personnel, Agenda Items 3 through 11, Staff Appointments. Number 4, Title Change. Number 5, Change of Assignment and Transfer. Number 6, Change of Assignments, ESY Paraprofessionals. Number 7, Staff Resignations. Number 8, Summer Recovery Additional Employees. Number 9, Curriculum Writing. Number 10, Additional HIT Program Substitutes. Number 11, Job Descriptions. Can I have a motion to approve the Personnel section?
Motion.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Vice President Constance Quintella,
Yes.
Susan Carlstrom,
Yes.
Lauren Harms.
Yes. Yes, I have a few to, I recused myself for 3C. I also want to congratulate Mr. Fleck on his, I guess, promotion to Sherman School. So congratulations. And I'm really sorry to see Ms. Lechner leave. I think she did a fantastic job, and we're going to miss her. So, Mr. Fleck, big shoes to fill. That's it.
Dr. Brittany Kirkland,
Yes.
Cindy Mago,
Yes.
Jennifer McCarr,
Yes.
Chris Monroe,
Yes.
President Paul Baiamonte.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. At this time, I want to congratulate Mr. Fleck on being, I guess, appointed, promoted, as the principal of Sherman School. If you want to come up and say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you. I have to say, the gentleman that was up here before, I was a little disappointed when he said he didn't speak Italian. I was looking to brush up on my Italian tonight. But thank you. Good evening. I'd like to extend my heartfelt thank you to the Board of Education, Ms. Goyce and your administrative staff, the parents, the dedicated teachers and staff at Sherman Elementary. I'm truly humbled by this opportunity and by the support and help and really all the guidance that I've been given these last couple of weeks. It goes really far in my book. This opportunity means a great deal to me. I look forward to collaborating with such passionate and committed team, continue the rich tradition that is Sherman Elementary. In this position, I'm looking to give back to Roselle Park what it's given back to me in the form of a student, an employee here, as well as a community member and now principal. I'm really looking forward to this opportunity, and thank you for trusting me. Thank you.
Thank you and good luck. Under Education, items 12 through 16, 2024-2025 NJ PBSIS. Number 13, District Mentoring Plan. 14, Professional Development Plan. 15, District Emergency Virtual or Remote Instruction Plan. Number 16, Harassment, Intimidation, Bullying Incidents. Can I have a motion to approve the education section?
Make a motion.
Have a second? A roll call, please.
Vice President Constance Quintella,
Yes, with an abstention to 16.
Susan Carlstrom,
Yes.
Lauren Harms,
Yes.
Dr. Brittany Kirkland,
Yes.
Cindy Mago.
Yes, with an abstention on 16.
Jennifer McCarr,
Yes, with a no to number 16.
Chris Monroe,
Yes.
President Paul Baiamonte.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Under business, agenda items 17 through 22, monthly certifications. 18, approval of bills. 19, ESEA accept grant allocation. 20, purchase of new equipment. 21, use of buildings and grounds. 22, proposal for Aldine Elementary. Can I have a motion to approve the business section?
Motion?
Do you have a second? Roll call, please.
Vice President Constance Quintella,
Yes.
Susan Carlstrom,
Yes.
Lauren Harms,
Yes.
Dr. Brittany Kirkland,
Yes.
Cindy Mego,
Yes.
Jennifer McCarr,
Yes.
Chris Monroe,
Yes.
President Paul Baiamonte.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Any continuing business? None? Any new business? Yes.
I just want to say and apologize. We are having some communication and technology issues this evening. It was estimated over an hour that we tried to figure out so that we could live stream. However, we were not able to troubleshoot. It is being recorded and it will be posted to our website tomorrow, but I did want to apologize for that. We've been trying, and we are conducting further investigation to resolve the issue in the morning. But I do want to personally thank Mr. Jared Foy for being here and assisting us, who has been working behind the scenes, so thank you.
Thank you. Any new business? None? Okay, public participation. Each member of the public may speak a maximum of 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record. I'm waiting, Lucy. Okay. Anyone? Seeing none, closing the public participation. That's it, right? Nothing else. The next scheduled board meeting will be an open session held on Tuesday, August 20th at 7 p.m. The board meeting will be held at the Roselle Park High School Auditorium. Can I have a motion for adjournment? Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.